Hi, and welcome to a second season of Science is Appealing. My name is Kevin O'Keefe, filling in for Nicole Crowley. We would like to start off by thanking Cablevision for allocating the airtime for last year, where we went over the various forms of sciences and how they relate to everyday life. This season we will continue down that same road. But this time we're going to show how our community is helping bring science into everyone's lives. Science Appeal is a 501c3 corporation, not-for-profit corporation, is noted for quoting one of our greatest presidents who's referring to science in the community. It is John F. Kennedy, who may have expressed it best when he said, "Science contributes to our culture in many ways as a creative, intellectual activity in its own right, as a light which has served to illuminate man's place in the universe, and as a source of understanding of man's own nature." Far too important and all-encompassing is the field of science to rest its knowledge securely wrapped in the hands of the intellects and far above the grasp of the average man. And that is why I will be committed this year to bring you activities and events that will help make you a part of science. I stress this because not everyone has embraced science, although science is everywhere and in every part of our lives. New York State is proud of its Intel winners, and we have every reason to be. But they do not represent the entire New York student body. In fact, if you were to look at all the student body's proficiency in science, you would find that only 30% of our state's fourth graders are scoring proficiently in science. This percentage, of course, falls below the national average. And if we jump up a few grades, we find that 31% of our 8th graders are scoring proficiently. And by the time a student is taking the test in the 12th grade, they are scoring only a 21% proficiency level. These numbers are concerning. What they are showing is that the general student is not catching on to science. This has reached such a point that New York State has formed an educational initiative to improve sciences among our students, and they're reaching out to the general community and the public at large to help in this effort to improve the scores of our students. I am proud to say that our local businesses and individuals in our community are hearing that message. They are hearing that message by contributing and being a participant in a special event in Greenlawn, New York on May 1st. This special event is a science bed race. What did I just say? A science bed race? Have you ever heard of one? I think it's very unique. I don't think there ever has been a science bed race, especially in New York. The idea behind it is to bring science to the forefront, to have our students see science as a special event, as something that's fun. So what is going to happen in Greenlawn? Well, on that day, on May 1st, there'll be a parade. There'll be a parade of science beds. And then there'll be a race of those science beds. And why they are called science beds is because each bed will be decorated in a different science theme. Some might be physics, some might be focused on biology, but each of them will have a science theme. The students will building those beds or helping with those beds will be exposed to that. The people watching, they'll be talking to their kids. The kids will be seeing this. In Topeka, Kansas, they have a bed race, and there's a video of it.
What? watch me.
Did you like that video? Did you really want to participate? I think you did. Well, you can. You can participate in our science bed race in Greenlawn. Now, the only difference between their bed race and the science bed race is that the bed is decorated not to look pretty necessarily, but to have a science theme about it. And the whole purpose of that science bed race is to show science is something that's fun. So the science bed race is about fun. It's about kids having a good time, learning a bit about science, maybe thinking of science in a little bit of a different light than they had before. Maybe not something where they have to go home and study, but now thinking of science as something that's outdoors, it's all around us. Maybe thinking of science is a bit more fun. Those who want to learn more about this event can contact Science Appeal. You can visit our website at www.greenlawnbedrace.com. That's www.greenlawnbedrace.com. On that website, you could apply, submit your application to be part of this event. On our weekly show, we will spend about 5 minutes discussing how some of our community members are participating in this event. And we'll highlight that participation and show how they're helping contribute to bringing science to the community and the students. But until then, let's take a look at another science that we've all been exposed to. Can you guess what I'm referring to? You have an idea of what science you've been exposed to?
If it isn't a piece of candy stuck in Junior's throat. X-ray gives the doctor the inside information. And now he can assure Mother that the candy will soon dissolve and Junior will be as good as ever.
Or what about an ultrasound? Or an MRI or a CAT scan. Radiology is a branch of science that uses imaging to both diagnose and treat disease through the use of diagnostic imaging and radiation therapy. Originally, this branch of medicine involved X-rays for diagnosis. If you're thinking about X-rays in a more recent medical advertisement, think again. X-rays have been around since 1895. And even though X-rays were invented back in 1895, how they worked remained a mystery to everyone, even the scientists. They were named X-rays because scientists didn't understand exactly how they worked, and therefore the X stood for the unknown. Today, however, we know that X-rays are a form of radiation belonging to the same family as light, heat, and radio waves. We also know that X-rays are produced anytime a solid object is struck by a high-speed stream of electrons. But back in 1895, this type of knowledge wasn't present, and this lack of understanding and lack of technical advancements made this application less than useful and reliable for medical diagnosis and treatment.
Late in 1895, in a little university laboratory in Bavaria, Professor Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen first noticed the strange effect which led to the announcement of his discovery of X-rays. And although the news was received by the public with a mixture of disbelief and apprehension, doctors immediately saw the possibilities of the mysterious new rays and began to use them. It was not until 1913, however, that their use became certain and reliable.
It was in 1913 that the hot cathode X-ray tube was invented by Dr. Coolidge, making X-rays much more reliable.
The hot cathode X-ray tube was introduced by Dr. William D. Coolidge of the General Electric Research Laboratory.
X-rays are like ordinary light, except they are of a much smaller wavelength and therefore invisible. And although X-rays cannot be seen, their effects can be made visual. Photographic film in general are sensitive to X-rays, and a specific type of it is used to record their presence.
In early X-ray tubes, the electrons necessary to produce the X radiation were released by first breaking down a small amount of air or other gas in the partially evacuated tube with high voltage applied between the terminals. Operation depended upon the amount of gas within the tube, and since this was variable, the tube was unreliable. In the present day hot cathode X-ray tube, of which this is one of several different types, there is a high vacuum, and the production of electrons depends only on the size and temperature of an incandescent tungsten filament with a cup-shaped structure surrounding it. This particular tube has two filaments, either of which may be used. The swarm of electrons, which is liberated or boiled off from the white-hot filament, is speeded up to a very high velocity by high voltage applied between the negative electrode or cathode, which carries the filament, and the positive electrode or anode, which is called the target. The electron stream is focused to a very small spot on the target by the cup-shaped cathode structure. It seems that the electron stream striking the target at terrific velocity is stopped so violently that the electromagnetic radiation known as X-rays is produced. The efficiency of X-ray production is very low, and most of the energy of the electron stream goes to heat the target. This heating effect of the electrons may be likened to the flame of a blowtorch striking a metal plate, while the light coming from the heated spot on the metal plate target corresponds to X-rays coming from the focal spot on the target of the X-ray tube.
Let's take a look at some other great movement images.
Recording of X-ray images on film is called radiography, and the finished films are known as radiographs. X-rays also have the power to make certain chemicals fluoresce, that is, give off visible light. A piece of special cardboard coated with one of these chemicals constitutes the so-called fluoroscopic screen. The use of such a screen to reveal an X-ray image is known as fluoroscopy. It has the advantage over radiography of enabling us to visualize internal structures in motion.
Besides being a much shorter wavelength, they also differ from light rays in that they cannot be focused in a camera, so normal photographic procedure cannot be employed. Instead, what is used is a shadow technique.
If I now turn on this small spotlight and place my hand in its beam, I can cast a shadow of my hand on a white card. Now, if instead of the spotlight I use an X-ray tube such as there is in this little portable X-ray unit, and if instead of the white card I use a film in a light-tight holder, I can cast an X-ray shadow of my hand, which on the developed film looks like this. Note, however, that instead of a solid silhouette shadow, as with light, the X-rays produce a shadow which shows a distinction between the bones and the flesh. In other words, X-rays pass through some substances more easily than through others, and the details of the image depend upon the amount of X-ray getting through the different substances which make up the object. It is this ability of X-rays to differentiate between types of substances which gives the rays their great diagnostic value.
Interpreting X-rays is a complex process that can only be done by a trained radiologist. However, with that said, I found some footage of an expert in that field explaining what he looks for in various X-rays of the abdomen and the pelvis. Although this footage is a bit slow-moving, it is quite interesting. When he explains radiological images and explains various types of contrast videos, and when viewing this video, do not think you could take some X-rays you might have had from the past and do some self-diagnosis. It takes a highly trained radiologist to interpret X-rays. With that said, let's move to the video.
Another type of contrast film is a cholangiogram, which is done to highlight the gallbladder and the bile ducts. Here we see an example where a catheter has been introduced into a common bile duct and a small amount of dye is injected. This highlights the hepatic ducts, the cystic duct coming from the gallbladder, and the common bile duct. The dye material escapes out of the common bile duct into the second part of the duodenum. More commonly, gallstones are visualized using ultrasonography. Here we have a clinical case of a 42-year-old female patient who had a history of severe pain in the right shoulder accompanied with nausea and vomiting. An ultrasound done in this patient showed the gallbladder and a single large stone. This is an example from another patient who had multiple stones in the gallbladder as seen on ultrasonography. Another type of imaging which is contrast enhanced is an angiogram. In this example, a small amount of dye is injected in the arteries. The example shown here has a catheter placed through a peripheral artery, most commonly the femoral artery in the groin, up the aorta, and a dye is injected into the celiac artery. This delineates the branches of the celiac artery, including the common hepatic artery, the splenic artery, and the left gastric artery. An angiogram may be used to delineate more extensive branches of the aorta, such as the one shown here on the right side, where the common iliac arteries on both sides and their branches are seen, along with the descending aorta, the renal arteries, and several other branches. Here we have a clinical case of a 32-year-old male with a history of hypertension and evidence of bruit in the right flank. Bruit is the sound heard on auscultation using a stethoscope, which indicates turbulence in the flow of any fluid, in this case blood. The X-rays from this patient are shown here. The left X-ray is a plain film of the abdomen. which doesn't show any remarkable clinical changes. The right film is that of an angiogram. This is the aorta, the left renal artery. The right renal artery is extremely small, and this is a stenosis of the right renal artery.
Rays that are invisible can reveal objects that are normally invisible to the human eye. That is why X-rays have become so useful in medicine and industry. Because X-rays can see those objects that the human eye cannot see. Radiology has advanced to include such imaging that not only allows for two-dimensional, but three- and four-dimensional imaging as well. Kara O'Brien from NASA has more.
It's the development of the X-ray in 1895. With this device, doctors finally had the ability to peer inside the human body without having to perform surgery. Since that time, this unique machine has proven to be invaluable, allowing doctors a two-dimensional view inside of the patient. Although this technology has been a revolution, the two-dimensional pictures were not appropriate for all types of soft tissue imaging, such as those used in cancer diagnosis and in heart procedures. So, in 1973, the introduction of the CAT scan again revolutionized the way doctors could see inside patients. This device for the first time allowed doctors a three-dimensional view of the body and was especially helpful in looking at soft tissue. So what's the next revolution? Currently, researchers using NASA technology are developing a device that could give doctors a type of X-ray vision. Using a CAT scan in conjunction with virtual reality, researchers have developed the augmented reality technology for minimally invasive surgery, or Artemis. This system may soon be helping to make surgeries much safer and much less invasive. I spoke with Vishant Shanawaz of Analytical Mechanics Associates to help us find out how Artemis may be used in the future.
Artemis is a state-of-the-art technology that fuses augmented reality technology with fiber optic shape sensing. The augmented reality part takes 3D images of a person's anatomy and superimposes it over the real patient itself. So this enables doctors and physicians to be able to take these 3D images and look at them exactly where they are on the real patient. The fiber optic shape sensing portion allows the doctor to see the shape and hence the tip of the needle or the RF catheter or whatever device he chooses to insert into the patient.
So can you explain to me exactly how this will work?
The patient goes into a CAT scan machine. You get CAT scans of the patient. You assemble that into a 3D model. You then take the 3D model and project it onto the screen. You then register the 3D model over the actual patient, and then the doctor can see where exactly the organs are. You then stick the needle in with this fiber optic shape sensing technology from Luna Innovations. You insert it into the patient. Once the doctor inserts the needle into the patient, the doctor can see where the needle is going. The doctor guides the needle to the exact spot, burns out the tumor, extracts the tissue, does whatever the procedure demands.
Perhaps the most recognized use of four-dimensional imaging is with fetal imaging, such as those images of an unborn baby stretching and waving. This is a dramatic difference from the ultrasound images used just a few years earlier to view an unborn child in the mother's womb or uterus. Radiology has allowed us to understand how our brain functions in such things as learning and determining a normal brain from a brain that may be affected by mental disease.
Scientists can use technologies developed in recent decades, such as functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI. This allows the imaging of functional activity in the living brain. The fMRI machine makes it possible to take pictures of activity within a living brain. This is not a picture of the neurons or pathways, but instead it's an image of the activity occurring among those neurons and pathways. This is an indirect approach as it uses a marker for neuronal firing. In this case, it detects blood flow and blood oxygenation to provide maps of brain activity. We can see the localized increases in blood flow as the brain capillaries expand in size. Blood flows more rapidly through a larger tube. This increase can be used to map brain activity in response to specific tasks and stimuli, like remembering. As with all other organs, the brain is subject to malfunction. Complex problems like understanding depression and schizophrenia can now be addressed using these and other techniques. Here's an example of the kind of information we get when comparing the brains of normal and mentally ill people. The image on the left is from a normal subject. On the right is a schizophrenia patient, where we can see the vast differences in the amount and location of brain activity. Clearly, several systems, including higher cognitive processes, hearing and movement, are impacted in this disease. Imaging provides a way to identify how the brain processes information differently in schizophrenia. As scientists are learning more about brain circuitry, they are learning more about which circuits are involved with specific tasks. This makes it possible to compare brain regions in healthy people and people with mental illnesses.
The field of radiology continues to improve in technology at a rapid pace. Where radiology was once limited to images of the anatomy, it is now able to provide images of the workings of organs, cells, and molecules. There are now, for example, PET scans that show a three-dimensional image of functional processes in the body. With that said, perhaps the two largest concerns in the future of radiology will be keeping up with the learning curve for these advances as well as concerns for staffing. Radiology is a growing field. The demand for highly trained radiologists is significantly increasing. Not a bad idea for a college career. Even some two-year schools offer degrees in radiology that will allow you to get into this specialized field. And until next time, I am Kevin O'Keefe, filling in for Nicole Crowley. Looking forward to seeing you on the Great Green Lawn Science Bed Race on May 1st. And until next Monday, have a good week.